Is this an area that you have neglected from time to time? The Nationals as a whole, I mean, David Gillespie.
No, look, I certainly haven't. I have the Hunter in my electorate of Lyne. I run right down to the banks of the Hunter River, and I've got thousands of people who are working in this critical part of the national economy. The resources and energy sector in the Hunter is critical for the broader New South Wales economy and the nation. As you know, Barnaby Joyce also shares some of the Hunter Valley in the bottom end of his New England electorate. And Matt Kean is former Resources Minister, and we are doing what good politicians do, and that is defending industry that it's created the wealth of the state and the nation, and that's what we're doing.
Why isn't your leader with you today?
Oh, look, he visited earlier this week, announcing some roadworks, but we're focusing on our part of the Hunter. As I said, you know, I've got a couple of coal mines in my electorate. I've got thousands of people that work in the resources and energy industries and all the runoff. You know, places like Tomago that employ almost 1,200 people in direct jobs depend on cheap, reliable electricity, and that comes out of modern coal-fired power stations, which is what we need. We've seen that the Labor Party has abandoned their roots. They're more interested in defending their votes and seats in inner-city metro electorates that are quite disconnected from how the modern industrial world operates, and that's on oodles and oodles of energy, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year.
What will you be telling your constituents and those in the Hunter about the security of their jobs? Because I know that the New South Wales government has a very different view to you. Matt Kean has put out a very different roadmap. Will you be following that roadmap?
Oh, well, look, I have great and plenty of other people who are like engineers, people who've run power stations, electricity grids. This idea of a distributed energy system from renewable energy sources is just pie in the sky. Look, renewable energy has a part in the energy mix, but to replace the baseload, that bit of energy that is pumping out all the time, the vast majority of that needs to be 100% guaranteed. And they're building it on a system that theoretically will need a whole new grid. Solar is only available 20% of the time, wind is only available 30% of the time.
Well, it's interesting you say that, David Gillespie.
Is going to work.
If I could just give you some comments that Kerry Schott said yesterday. She's the Energy Security Board Chair. As she said, I would stress that change is going to be profound and urge everyone to calm down and get on with it. I think the important thing is to really get on with it and don't put effort in trying to stop the changes that are occurring with the increase in wind and solar and other sources of generation that are coming in. We've got hydrogen, etc. Looking at commercially, we really need to just integrate these renewables. What's your motivation here? Aren't you trying to put a brake on renewables rather than support it?
No, look, as I said, renewables have a place in the energy mix. But if you look at any international energy market reports, once you start integrating more than 10% and then 20% and 30%, you get a very unstable grid, because renewable energy sources are what's called asynchronous. They come and go with large surges. The whole electricity grid runs on a very fine balance, 240 volts at 50 hertz per second, and if it varies from that, you get brownouts or, at worst, blackouts. And baseload is that amount of energy that everyone needs 24/7, whether it's sunny, windy, rainy, wet season, East Coast low, or heat wave. We need energy around the clock. Now, if you're going to source that from renewable sources, you are putting your whole grid at the whim of the weather. Does that mean you're only going to transmit from your TV station when there's either sun or wind, and that it's not rainy or cloudy? Are people going to work in their factories when it's wet for a week, or we have an East Coast low? Seriously,
so
Laura, this is pie in the skies.
Well, are you saying that the New South Wales government's plan is pie in the sky and their plan risks these brownouts and blackouts?
Oh, exactly. That is exactly what I'm saying. It's bad engineering and it's bad economics. We know that the more renewables you put into the system, you are actually doubling and tripling the amount of infrastructure that you need, and you only use it 20 or 30% of the time. And then you have these huge batteries which won't replace generation of energy. They can only temporarily store it. And they're important in this new energy mix. Look, I'm not saying we're not going to have an energy mix. It's just that you can't replace the base, which is that constant bit that never changes, that has to be there to run the grid, needs to be coming from an ultra reliable source. And you need that from a power station. Like when the wind's too windy, you can't use it because you get the wrong voltage and frequency. If it's not blowing enough, the same problem applies. You have this problem with day and night, twilight and dawn, sunset. You can't generate when it's cloudy. So, so what if you put a huge battery in, The battery in South Australia is the biggest one in the Southern Hemisphere, and it runs South Australia for 45 seconds. Look, we just have to have a wake-up. Now, I know the AEMO has been proposing this distributed energy network, but really it's bad economics, and it makes for a very brittle system. You will see, once the penetration of renewables, all the integration hardware costs billions of dollars, and they're proposing to build new grids everywhere, and the New South Wales government is going to put a levy on to pay for all this new transmission network, and then 70% of the time it's not using, it's just there. 5 or 6 years ago, or a bit longer, everyone was accused of gold-plating the electricity grid, the transmission system. It's really up-to-date and a safe system. The problem is the reliability of where the generation comes from, and that's my misgivings with it.